Welcome to the FemiNinja Project. I am your host, Cheryl I Love, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the FemiNinja Project. Welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and I am really excited. I have the most fantastic guest with me today. She's actually a return guest. Her name is Torey Ivanic. So Torey, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's so nice to be here.
I am so looking forward to this conversation because we sure had a good one last time. And for my listeners, if you haven't heard Torey's previous episode, you want to go back in the archives and look for this. It is episode number 36, and the title of the episode is Not on My Watch. And I am sitting, I just got chills. I'm sitting across the table from a woman who, the only way I could describe her is courage beyond belief.
Thank you.
You are welcome. So let my listeners know a little bit about you and why I am so in awe of you.
Well, I'm not sure why you're so in awe of me, but our last conversation really centered around my book, which came out in the summer of 2018. Mm-hmm. The reason I'm here now is because April is coming up, and that is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And my memoir was my Me Too memoir. So the title of it is No Big Deal, and it is about my journey of reporting my gymnastics coach for the sexual violation that he was the perpetrator of back in 1992. And so a friend of mine, a teammate of mine, and I reconnected about 15 years after the crimes had happened. And we went forward to the police, and a long story short is that we ended up in a 5-day-long jury trial, and he went to prison for 43 years. So, yes. And then I wrote the story because it is a hopeful story, and it just happened to come out of me during the Me Too movement, but I didn't know what Me Too meant before I started writing that book in 2016. And so it was just a really interesting healing process, honestly. It's been a long healing process, and the book has just been a big part of that.
Well, what an incredible way to get your power back. And not only that, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so in awe of you, is to have the courage to go through what you did and to stand up and say, he did this. Yes. And even when you first did approach the police, they kind of like poo-pooed it a little bit. But then later on, more women started to come forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Part of the reason that I was adamant about going forward is that he was in a position of authority. He was a chiropractor and a physician assistant by the time we went to the police. And he had moved back to our hometown and was treating gymnasts from our old gym. Ugh. And that's why we titled the last one, Not on My Watch. Mm-hmm. It just really turned my stomach to think of him hurting other young girls, and just being in that position where he had access so easily. And this many years later, and I figured, if I report it and it's never happened again, nothing's going to happen. But it took 7 months, but someone else from his chiropractic office came forward and made a report. And that's what really got the police going down.
And starting to investigate a little bit more thoroughly.
Absolutely. And really just our report, after that other woman made a report, they brought him in for questioning for her. And then he, explained it all away with his medical textbooks and everything. But then they dropped our reports on the table. And the way the detective described it to me was he broke down crying and admitted it all. So he did get arrested that night based on how much evidence we had, because I had kept written letters from him for 15 years. And I also did a tapped phone call on which he admitted to many counts of rape.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So we had built a body of evidence already, and it just took one other woman coming forward and making a fairly less severe complaint, but a complaint, in and of
It just
itself.
gave validation to your
Absolutely.
story and your
Right.
friend's story.
Yes. And so
Wow.
then I think 6 or 7 more women came forward, but they cut off our case at I think 5 total. I can't even remember now. It's been so long. So that was 2008 that we were in trial.
So basically, there were probably a whole lot more women
I'm
involved that
sure.
did not come forward, but you have to think of how many women you protected.
Yes.
Women and young girls. Oh, you're my
Absolutely.
hero. I
Oh,
just
thank
love that. I mean, I know how difficult it is to report.
Absolutely.
And I know a lot of times how you're treated when you do report, you know, that you're
Absolutely.
seeking money or you're seeking something else or you're making it up. So I just respect you so much. And again, you are my shero.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl.
So what are you doing now?
Oh my goodness. I am in a whirlwind of momness right now. So I actually just made the decision to homeschool my son.
Wow.
Yeah, so that will be an interesting new development and
How
fun.
old is he?
He's 9.
Okay.
And we've gradually figured out that he's got both a learning disability and giftedness, which that combination just is tough in the public school system.
Yeah, but it oftentimes does kind of go together.
Right. It does oftentimes go together. And all of these things are things that I'm learning and I, haven't never really assumed that I would have to deal with, but it's actually, I'm really excited about it. I'm excited to spend more time with him. I'm excited to be able to make learning fun. And I have the freedom and the flexibility because I own my own business. I have my homeopathic practice that I do from home most of the time. And so I have the freedom to do it. And I really want to make learning fun for him again. And so that's a big step.
Well, this is funny because you said you're learning so much.
Yes.
And you truly are a lifelong learner. I mean, your
Absolutely.
whole life, you've always been looking into learning new things and new techniques. And you are a homeopathic physician, but you're also a physician's assistant as well. Is that true?
Well, I'm not homeopathics don't have homeopathic physicians. So I'm
okay.
a certified homeopath.
Okay,
Just
there you go.
clarify. I am a physician assistant by my education and I am licensed, yes, but I'm not practicing as a physician assistant right now. And I think that I'm done.
Yeah.
That was a good time in my life. I love medicine. I love helping people. I love helping people heal. But the Western medical model is definitely just not where I want to put my time and energy. And so my homeopathic practice is kind of priority 1. And then I just got back from a 200-hour yoga teacher training.
Yay.
Which I loved, and I got Reiki certified while I was there. So I'm
wow.
really adding new skills to my, healer set. And I
Your
love
little tool chest.
Exactly, all kinds of tools in that chest now. I think too that I've kind of moved into. I also run masterminds, and I see that people thrive in so many different ways. And just because you feel physically healthy and well doesn't mean that you are thriving or feeling mentally healthy and well. And so I've loved masterminding and that group power mentality of that type of.
So tell us a little bit more about Mastermind. I mean, is this something that you do online? Is this something that you do like in group calls? Or how do you run this? And who are your clients, or who are you? Who's your tribe?
Yes, I love that. I learned about masterminding in 2015 when I was doing a 9-month business and self-development program. And it had a mastermind component to it. And I loved it because I felt like it was where I pushed my growth edge. We were talking about growth edge before we jumped on here. And I feel like that is where the magic happens, right? When you're just a little bit uncomfortable and maybe you're even sweating when you're on that call, And so it was the way that those masterminds were run was 2 hours every 2 weeks. There was a moderator or facilitator and then up to 5 or 6 people in each group. And so I loved it so much that when that group closed, I was like, I'm not going to be without one of these. So I took 3 of my close friends who were all moms and all business owners, and I told them that we needed to do this. And they all said yes, thankfully. And so we became the Hot Mamas That Masterminded.
That's the title or the name?
The HMTM, yes, the Hot Mamas That Mastermind.
That's so cool.
And one was in California, one was in Phoenix, I was here, and one was in Ohio. And so we were all on Zoom calls every 2 weeks for 2 hours. And so since there were 4 of us, it was great. We each got about a half hour. And the way it works is just each person catches us up on what's going on, like here's what I've done in the last couple weeks, and here's what I need help with. And so that's called their ask. And then we go, and it's very clear, no crosstalk, no social, jumping in. And then we'd go through and have feedback from each one of the other mastermindees. There were, you can ask some clarifying questions if you want, but it's really, really structured. And I saw from before that group even started, one of the girls had her company come to her and ask her to do some trainings. And she threw this question out to the group of just like, hey, I'm thinking of charging $300 a day. And the group was like, wait a second, and she ended up charging, I think, $3,000 per weekend. So basically upped her charge by about 5 times, right? And they said yes immediately. So she probably could have asked for more, honestly, because she was going to teach a bunch of their franchisees how to do what she was doing, right? So she basically added $30,000 to her income before we even started the mastermind group.
That is so amazing. And the importance of having an outside observer who doesn't have all that emotion attached to
Absolutely.
it of, I'm not good enough, that's, too much to ask, $300, is that going to work out? And who am I to think that someone's going to pay me that? Well,
yeah, absolutely. Having other people see you and reflect to you your strengths and who you are and your value on a bi-weekly basis is priceless, in my opinion. So I've seen the power of these groups and the way we all get into that self-talk of like,
yes,
I'm not worth this or I'm not worth that. But when you put yourself in a group of women who you have a huge respect for and an admiration for, and you think that they're amazing badasses, then you see the amazing badass in yourself a lot more clearly, and they don't let you get away with that, right? And for me, my experience with it was, I've always been somewhat skeptical. And so when someone in a position of authority, say a doctor or a therapist or whoever, a coach, tells me, oh, you should do this, I might question that. But when 3 or 4 other people, given the same ask, given the same, criteria, all of them say, no, you should do this, I listen.
Especially people that like, and trust. So you've got that relationship and that bond with them, not a coach that maybe you just hired.
Exactly.
I've gone through a couple of people who wanted to help me with my business and help me with other things. And I know now when somebody is approaching me and running after me going, I can help you, I turn and run the other way. So you really have to have that organic, natural kind of affinity for each other or that support. But you can tell, you can feel when someone doesn't have the best intentions. And I don't know if that's just my natural skepticism as well. Totally. My issues with trust, which are significant, and I'll be the first to admit it. Right, exactly. Or, my martial arts training, which I think maybe it's all of that together that makes me a little bit more, no.
Right.
This is not the path to take. This is not the thing to do, and go away.
Yeah, I think it's true. Like to have really strong peer groups. I mean, it's that whole you are, the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? When you put yourself in these groups with people who inspire you, and even if you don't spend a lot of time with them, like it's really intense and really powerful time when you do, and they're on your side, you've got them to reach out to. Usually we have a Facebook group too, so it's not necessarily 2 weeks between contact, like you can jump in and ask questions between those times. But I think it's true that especially women helping women, it's a really powerful space. And what's great about the masterminds that I've run, at least, almost always there's a lot of diversity in industry, in level of business, and everybody brings something different to the table. So it's not like hiring one coach, right? You have 5 coaches in one, And I've heard a lot of people, one of the biggest like, oh, I can't do that things is like 2 hours every 2 weeks. That's so much time. But what I see happening so quickly is you have this list of 20 things that you think you need to do. And that mastermind helps you nail that down to 3. And it takes so much stuff off your plate and helps you laser focus on like the priorities and what's best to get done now.
Wow, that's getting me really excited. I want to do one.
Yes, I want you to do one.
The FemiNinja Mastermind.
There you go.
Okay, that's going to be on my list.
It should be. It's, if you've never been a part of one, it's definitely worth checking out. Like, I think everybody, you know, has their different ways that they work, but for me, masterminding it's essential to me and keeping myself on that growth edge. You know, I'm thinking back to when I decided to go to the yoga teacher training. I took it to my mastermind girls first because it was 16 days away from my family.
Yeah, that's a lot of time.
And when I am the predominant home parent who does the majority of school drop-off, school pickup, you know, all the things, I felt like, I told the girls, I was like, I feel like this is just such a lot to ask of my husband. And one of my mastermind girls reframed it in such a beautiful way. And she said, why is that a lot to ask of him? Maybe if you guys were the parents to these children that said, this is something that I want to do and I'm going to go do it because it's good for me and we're going to make it happen. You know, how does that shift their mentality of like why and when we do these things for ourselves, you know, because and I tell my clients all the time, right? If you not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of all those other humans as well. And so I loved that reframe and I took it to my husband and I just asked because I knew he would say yes for sure. And he said, absolutely. You know, like, this is what I want for Christmas. I want a 16-day yoga teacher training. And he said, absolutely.
That's something Santa Claus really can't bring you, is it?
Nope, not so easily.
I love that because that's, you know, our relationship with the guys in our lives, even if they're friends or, you know, siblings, of course, I don't have any brothers, you know, our husbands, that kind of support is just
huge.
So huge.
Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't have done half of the things that I've done in my life if it weren't for the support of my husband. So I always like to call it the many magnificent men in my life because I did have a lot, especially, you know, through martial arts training. You meet a lot of men that way. And just some of the gifts that they brought to me and even helping me not only become a ninja and helping me in my training, but a lot of the things that they taught me helped me be even more of a lady. I mean, I learned even more how to tap into that. Not only, you know, that feminine strength.
Yes.
And that empowerment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and that's basically what you were demonstrating to your kids, because you have a son and you have a daughter too.
I do, yeah. I have a son and a daughter, so yes.
And how old is your daughter?
My daughter is 7.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
She is, such a light. So fun.
Oh, that's good. Does she do gymnastics?
She is doing gymnastics at a very phenomenal gym that has a great philosophy on not too intense, not too much, and there aren't actually very many men in that gym. So
nice.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say no to that, but I obviously my radar's up in that sport. Right. You know, that sport is just, it's common.
Yeah, I would think in gymnastics and ice skating and
swimming, I think too. Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, predators are everywhere. That's
Absolutely.
So unfortunate. But, you know, it's something to be aware of all the time, that there are predators everywhere in every walk of life, in every profession, and you got to have your radar up. It's not to be paranoid.
Right.
It's to be aware.
Yeah. And not to be afraid. Just to be aware and not, especially when you have children, you don't let your guard down. You don't let them ride home with a male coach or any coach by themselves. Like, it just shouldn't be that way. You know, like there needs to be safety checks of where's your kid?
Multiple safety checks.
Yes, absolutely.
So someone doesn't fall through the cracks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's something else I wanted to talk about. Because, that's your open space mastermind.
Yes.
Okay.
Open space is kind of a work in progress now.
Okay. So is this something beyond the mastermind that you're doing now?
I think so. So, yes. So I've never been someone who lives in uncertainty very well. I spent kind of my entire life, I'm going to be this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to, you know, checking off the boxes. I'm going to have kids, I'm going to get married, I'm going to be a PA, you know. And after I published the book, it was an interesting time because my father had passed away right before I released the book.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And that, the dynamics of the shifts in my relationships with men and men in my family and things, just the book isn't an easy book to promote, like, hey, here's a copy of my book. Like it's not an easy read. It feels sort of heavy. So I was looking towards speaking about it, but April of 2019, then I did do my first big keynote speech in California.
I
did. And it was so fantastic in the setting of Sexual Assault Awareness Month. However, it's just not an easy thing to be constantly talking about. And talking about sexual assault is not something I want to do every day of my life. I'm passionate about it. I'm happy to talk about it, but it's not something I want to build a business around.
Right.
And so open space is more of like the way that I healed. When I look back at my life, I used nature and open spaces to heal more than anything. And so as I have my homeopathic practice, but I started diverging out, by writing the book and running masterminds. And so when I thought about my, like, a kind of an overarching theme for like a next business or what to call all of that, it was open space, and kind of open space for changing, right? Like, how do you change? You have to have space to change. And that means you have to have time to change. You can't just have every minute of your life stocked full of things and then make a huge change in your life. You have to take away something so that you can fill it with other things. And so masterminding for me is part of that, right? Like, if you carve out those 2 hours every 2 weeks, you can make huge changes by just doing that. But I see open space becoming more things, and I'm just not sure what that is yet. And so while I was writing the book, I've explained this to some other people, as I literally felt like I was being pulled from ahead. Like, it was the first time in my life where I couldn't not do it. I knew exactly what needed to get done. I didn't know when it was going to get done, but it was very clear, like, I want to get this book done and write this book and get it out. And I had some issues, and we might have talked about it on the last episode, with getting it out, because I had bought a self-publishing package, and they didn't want me to use my real name, and they didn't want me to use his real name. And to me, it wasn't a memoir if I couldn't say I wrote it, and this is really true that this happened. So I changed a lot of names of other people in the book, but it was important to me to keep his name and my name true, and that whole part of it, as accurate as I could.
Were you still with the same self-publishing company? Or?
I actually ended up pulling out of that self-publishing package, because every time I'd submit my manuscript, they would say, oh, we need you to change this, or we need you to change that. And I got to the point where I said, I'm not changing any of that. So I pulled out of that contract, and I lost a few $100, but it wasn't a big deal. And I ended up just doing it myself, completely doing it myself. And that was a really empowering piece to the story too. I needed to do it my way, because if I had to change all those names, it didn't feel like I could even talk about it, right? How do you talk about a book you wrote that doesn't even have your name on it?
Well, the thing is, they were trying to change your story.
Yeah.
And they were trying to silence your voice.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I talk about a lot, is to be able to find your voice and express yourself, and nobody can take that away from you. I mean, they do try. And when you can stand up and say,
no, yeah,
you cannot silence me anymore. You cannot take my voice away. So I think that's a really strong message, a very powerful message for anybody who's listening to this recording, especially, men too. I mean, it's not just women, but men too. I've known quite a few that will just kind of contract within themselves and not stand up for themselves. And it's like, come on, stand your ground, find your voice.
Absolutely. And when you do that, when you stand your ground and you find your voice, it's not always going to land well with everybody, and that's okay.
Right.
It's okay. Like, I am not telling my story to hurt anyone, to, like, the way that, a friend takes it, or if it brings up pain in other people. That's not my intention with this book. It is to tell my story for my story, and hopefully, yes, it will land well with people, and it will help them move forward in their lives. But you can't speak your truth without sometimes upsetting people, and just being okay with that too. Like, I could have changed all those names and made it a very flimsy story, and it would not have helped anyone, I don't think, myself included. By telling it as real as I could is what brings out the real emotion in it and the real story of it. And so it's an interesting thing, and I think that there's a time and a place that sometimes, yes, it is okay to not, speak your truth if you feel like it's going to create havoc in many other areas of your life. But you'll know, you know what I mean? Like you in your own self will know whether or not it's the right time.
If it feels right.
Yeah.
Or if it doesn't
Go with
feel
your
right.
gut. Yeah.
Yeah.
And be realistic with the people who it's going to impact, and just be honest with them of like, I put my manuscript out to several people and said, if there's anything you want me to change, please let me know. Because I wouldn't have felt in integrity if I didn't offer that out at least.
So these were some of the people who were mentioned in the book.
Right. Yeah. And my direct family members and things, I wanted I wanted them to know what I was saying before it went public. But what else can you do to stand in your integrity other than that? Here's what I'm going to write. And if you want to change it, please let me know. And so that's going to be different for everybody, right?
Did anybody say, yes, please change this? Or did you, what kind of feedback did you get?
Yes,
okay.
I did get some, yes, please change this. And I happily changed those things. It was interesting, the things that came up that people didn't want said. And my one girlfriend, who is a huge part of the book, she was so great. Like, she's, obviously the other victim in the case, and she was so great. She's now on board completely, and she was never holding me back, but it was different for her, like, and again, like, our memories of something that happened 25 years ago are not going to be the same.
Right.
And she really was as supportive as she could be, and she actually didn't ask me to change anything, but it was hard.
I was going to say, it had to have been hard for her just to see the written word.
Absolutely.
Because I know even some of my story, when I write it out, it's like, oh my God, did that really happen?
Yes.
But yet there's a cathartic type of experience with it too. And even saying it, I think I told you this when we had our last interview, that I never even said out loud in front of a group of people of what had happened to me until it was probably last year.
Yeah.
It was 1 year ago.
Yes.
And that's been 19 years.
Yes.
And it was really hard. And it was in a group of women, 30 women. And the reaction, too, was really interesting, shock and horror.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, so I wasn't exaggerating. This was awful.
Right. Well, and the title of my book is No Big Deal for a reason, right? Because I kept telling myself it wasn't that big of a deal because I was comparing what happened to me to what happened to her. Oh. And so we have very different stories. And I can't tell her story from, because her story is her story.
Right.
But she and I have built an amazing friendship since we've reconnected. I introduced her to her husband, and she now has 2 kids, and her marriage has been strong for 12 years, I think, 12 years.
Wow.
So there's all kinds of really fun aspects to our reconnection and all the good that came out of us reconnecting. But me writing the book was really tough on her. And I absolutely acknowledge that. And yet, I felt like I needed to do it for me. And so I'm so thankful that she allowed me to. And I have seen her take some huge leaps in her healing, but everybody's healing path is different too, and that, I think, to me is what Open Space, coming back to that, is all about, is that there's no one path to healing any trauma or any wound or any physical illness. Honestly, there's so many different ways you can do those things. And it's actually really all within you, It all comes back to you have it in you to heal these things. And so I could be someone who helps you do that, or there's so many people out there. You're someone who helps people do that. You find the things within yourself that make you unstoppable, and you just keep building that toolkit.
You become your own expert.
Absolutely.
And that's what happened to me when, after I was traumatized, and you have to go to therapy, and I'm like, okay, so I went, and it was doing really nothing for me except re-triggering me, and it was almost like it was making things worse, and it really was.
And I think it does for a lot of people.
And especially, I'm like you. I don't want someone sitting me down and lecturing me or telling me what I have to do, what I should do, and blah, blah, blah. And it took a while for that, that warrior spirit to come bursting through and say, you can't tell me what to do.
Yes.
You don't know.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it was that mental head smacking moment. I know what to do. I know how to comfort myself. I know how to heal myself. And a lot of the outdoors was part of it too, getting back to the mountains and nature. And learning how to beat people up, that was pretty good too.
I'm sure that was fantastic.
It was just great. Yeah.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I just recently went back to the training. I took a 3-year long hiatus as I was writing the book, and they were trying to push me to the next level, which was going to be the kind of time commitment. And I still had my physical therapy practice, and I was helping them run the dojo, and they wanted me to do this monster of a test and learn 77 new techniques. And I'm like, I don't think so. I'm a little bit busy right now. And my sensei actually said, you don't have a choice. Because, when Concho comes into town, he's just going to pull you up in front of everybody, and he's going to test you.
Oh.
And he said, you either, I can't remember how he said it, you're either going to have to test or you're going to quit. Oh. And I said, all right, I quit.
Yeah.
And he
I don't like
looked at
those,
me
you don't have a choice words. No way.
Right, exactly. He says, you just tell me when my last day is.
Yeah.
And I'll stop showing up, and I'll stop paying you tuition.
Yes.
It was probably 2 days later, and he had, his top students. There were 3 of us, and he was talking about testing and blah, blah, blah. In the middle of what he was saying, he stopped and looked at me, and he said, oh, and I did talk to Concho, and you don't have to test if you don't want to. That ticked me off even more.
Yeah.
It was like, you really think you can talk to me that way and get away with it? And I took 3 years off. So I just went back, and it's just really fun now. And
good.
Everybody's happy I'm back.
Yeah.
And so
good.
am I.
I'm sure. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Yeah. I think we all have it in us, and we know, like, intuition is for real.
Yeah.
But we've numbed it so much, and I think screens, right, and phones, and all these distractions that we have these days, we've distanced ourselves from our intuition and what really feels right in our bodies. So I'm really glad that I just got back from yoga teacher training. Yoga was a huge part of my healing. And this is a crazy story, but while I was there, yoga is a lot like gymnastics. There are poses that you do in yoga that are gymnastics, right? So I have a great handstand still.
Oh, as a matter of fact, for my listeners, go onto Torey's website, because there's a great picture of you doing a handstand in the mountains. Yeah, it's just awesome.
I love it. That's probably kind of old, but that's okay. But we were doing wheel, which is a bridge, gymnastics-wise, and, I don't usually go into those poses because I just don't really try that often. But it was a man who was teaching that day, and he came and he adjusted me, and so he grabbed my shoulders, and I didn't get triggered. I don't like the word triggered, because I think the word impacted is better.
I like that word. I'm going to make a note of that.
Yeah, because there's a reason that we're impacted when things happen, and that's okay. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with us. I feel like triggered has this connotation of you're a victim and you've been triggered. But I was impacted by it. Not at the time. When he first touched my shoulders, and he had me put my hands on his ankles, and so he pulled my shoulders, and I did fine there. And then he had us do this breathing technique that is known to bring up a lot of emotion. And then he came and he put a blanket over me, and he just touched my heart chakra and my head chakra, and this huge emotional release happened for me that day.
Wow.
And it was such a great, powerful reminder of, I didn't go back into my story and relate it, that it was just great to know there's still emotion in there, and it's okay, and it might never go away. And that's okay. But I've found so much forgiveness through all the work that I have done. And I mean, honestly, I've only ever gone to therapy consistently for about a year, and that was way back when I first decided to go to the police. But I've done yoga since basically I was about 20. And body work, moving my body and working on my mental state at the same time, is just magic for me. And so
I think it's magic for everybody, but a lot of people don't realize it or don't have that connection. I mean, I'm a mover. I've been a mover most of my life. And that's what part of the problem was, is people were having me sit down and talk about it or think about it. And I just felt so constrained.
Right.
But in doing the Feldenkrais training after all of this, in conjunction with martial arts at the same time, because there's a huge connection, with the gymnastics and yoga, there really is a huge connection with Feldenkrais and martial arts. And Moshe Feldenkrais was a martial artist. So in working through that, I mean, it was so... empowering, and it was just so releasing in a way that I can't even describe.
Absolutely. Yeah. It does become something that it's hard to put words to.
Right. So when you're trying to recommend it to somebody, they look at you like, how is this going to help? And I felt that way about martial arts when my sensei kept, because he was my acupuncturist first before he was ever my teacher, and he kept trying to talk me into training with him as a form of healing. And I'm like, I don't understand how, spending time in a smelly martial arts school with a bunch of sweaty men, trying to punch me, hit me, kick me, pin me is going to help me heal. This just does not compute. But it was even my very first class. I was terrified for the first 2 years doing it, but I still kept going back because even after my first class, as terrifying as it was, there was something about it that, I just walked out of there and I just felt free.
Yes.
I felt light.
Yeah.
I giggled the whole way home.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I hadn't giggled in a really, really long time since, but it was so
that growth
empowering.
edge thing. Yeah. Like putting yourself into a situation that you wouldn't put yourself into every day. And then just seeing what happens from there. Yeah.
But putting yourself in that situation, just taking that step, it's like you're standing on the edge of a doorway. And you notice I didn't say cliff. You're standing on the edge of a doorway and your foot is lifted up and it's kind of hovering over the threshold. It's like, do I go? Do I stay? Do I go? Do I stay? And sometimes you just have to say, what the heck? And you just leap over that doorway and there's so much on the other side.
Yeah.
So much to discover, so much to learn, especially about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're listening to this, remember that. Take a chance. So let's talk about, there's one other thing that I really wanted you to talk about is something that you've got going on this summer.
Yes, camp.
You're going to camp.
I'm going to camp. I was part of an organization that had a camp for many years, and then they discontinued it in 2018. And so I was not satisfied with not having an adult camp in my life. And I figured, we might as well just try this. So I partnered with a friend and we just went for it. We rented out an entire kids sleepaway camp in Deckers, Colorado. And we put some friends together and, people, I know a lot of coaches and things, and so we just put a presenters list together and just went for it, and it was amazing. So last year we had 50 people, 50 campers.
Men and women or just women?
Men and women, yeah. There's a little bit more women than men, but there are men and women, yes. And age range probably from like 25 to maybe 65, 70. Mm-hmm. And it's no alcohol. It's, a clean and sober kind of weekend, but lots of self-growth work, lots of play, lots of music, lots of fun, and it's just amazing. So it's called Camp is in Your Heart because it's that playful spirit of a child, of just like, let's just get together and be a community and love each other and have fun and grow and learn and try new things. And so this year I'm very excited because we added a day. So last year we just did Friday to Sunday to just like check it out. Let's see if we can make this happen. And it ended up being just a total success. So this year we're adding Thursday. So you come in at 4:00 on Thursday and you stay till 2:00 on Sunday. And there will be lots of workshops, lots of options like yoga on a stand-up paddleboard. And, and there'll be some business development stuff, but mostly like a lot of mindset kind of work. But then we're applying those skills out in the camp too. So every workshop will have like a follow-up out on the campus somewhere. So we will be integrating and experiential learning and, just playing with a lot of beautiful heart-centered entrepreneurs, basically.
So I love the word play and the playful spirit of a child.
Yes.
And just exploring and being together, because that is exactly how we learned how to move, how to go through life as children. And as we became, started school, we didn't do that quite so much, and then became adults and everything's so heavy and so serious. But when you get into that playful spirit, that's where the true learning and the true self-discovery is.
Absolutely. And creativity, just it's just so fun. So if you haven't been to camp in 30 or 40 years, you should probably come.
Or more.
Or ever. I mean, some of this, I only went to camp actually. I went to some gymnastics camps when I was a kid that I liked.
Yeah, not quite the same.
Not the same. And
you're working.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're working hard. And then I went to a 4-H camp and I was so homesick. So I didn't really actually ever have like an awesome camp experience as a child. So these camps, oh, I just love them. And my kids have been going to that same camp. It's a YMCA camp that we use. And they both went to this camp last year. The staff at the camp itself is phenomenal. And so they've helped us make it just an amazing experience.
Wow.
When we ask, they're like, sure, we can do that for you.
So how can people get a hold of you? This is going to be listed on the podcast, but I want to hear it in your own voice because you're doing such a great job of
Absolutely. Thank you.
presenting yourself. I mean, I want to go to camp.
I would love for you to come to camp. So the camp website is campisinyourheart.com. Very clear and very straightforward. I do not have it listed on my personal websites. It's kind of a group effort. It is mine, but I also, lots of people help me. So I just haven't attached it to my other websites. The homeopathic practice is homeopathy first with the number 1st.com. That's my one-on-one homeopathic services website. And then Open Space, which is the work in progress, is openspace4, the number 4 at the end.com.
And of course, your book.
Yes, and my book is No Big Deal, and it is available on Amazon in both physical, ebook, and audio forms. Yeah, all those.
So really, check out Torey's website. Check out her book. I mean, it is an amazing story. Again, I am sitting across the table from somebody who has courage beyond belief. She is truly my hero. And remember to stand your ground, find your voice, listen to your intuition, and follow it. Because that is the way of the FemiNinja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.